Welcome to our first topic on our subject, Leia 103, entitled The Concept of Security. So, at the end of this presentation, the student will be able to, you will be able to first define security, second, explain the concepts of asset, risk, threat, and vulnerability. Third, enumerate the categories of security. And lastly, you would be able to discuss the importance of private security in organization. Okay, so security is important to everyone. So it is important to individuals such as a homeowner who wants to protect valuable items in his house, or a parent who does not want her child to be harmed while in school, or an employee who wants to save for a comfortable retirement, or an online shopper who wants to purchase a gadget via the internet. So it is also very important to governments that maintain military forces, use intelligence services, legislate civil defense policies, and implement emergency preparedness measures to serve and protect its citizens. So security is what we are doing all the time. Security does not only involve uh, securing our physical establishment like our house, but also security involves our uh, like food, that we have foods in our table. We have food security that would be able to provide us food in every day, or what we call as your feelings. Diba? Your feelings towards your partner or towards your family. If you have that good relationship, meaning you have a secured relationship towards your partner, towards your friends, or towards your relatives. Okay, so let us now define security. So security comes from the word secure, that is derived from the Latin word securus, which means safe or without care, or from secura, wherein se means free from and cura means care. So the word secure is comes from the Latin word securus. So another definition of security is being free from danger, risk, injury, fear, trouble, doubt, or anxiety. So all uh, that I have mentioned, if you are free from that, uh, free from danger or risk or injury, fear, then you are secured, or you are uh, what we call as you have that security. Okay, so the degree of protection or resistance against harm, danger, loss, and criminals. So you feel secured if you have that degree of protection or resistance again against harm, against danger, loss, or even criminals. So those are the definitions of security. So another definition comes from um, the Institute for Security and Open Methodologies, ICOM, an open community and a nonprofit organization that published in 2001. So, according to their open source security testing methodology manual, uh, security was defined or is defined in this way. So, for a threat to be effective, it must interact either directly or indirectly with the asset. To separate the threat from the asset is to avoid a possible interaction. Therefore, it is possible to have a total 100% security if the threat and the asset are completely separated from each other. So otherwise, what you have is safety of the asset, which is provided by the controls you put in the asset or the degree to which you lessen the impact of the threat. So that is according again to the open source security testing methodology manual. So in our own understanding. So how do we able to uh, discuss that in our own understanding? Okay, so for example, to be secure from lightning, one must move to where lightning can't reach, such as deep in a mountain, or threats which can't be separated from the assets must be made safer so that interactions and any effects from interactions do little or no harm. So in the same example of a security from lightning, to be safe from lightning, one must stay indoors during storms, avoid windows or other openings, and use lightning rods on the roof. So therefore, under the context of operational security, we call security the separation of an asset and a threat, and a safety the control of threat or its effects. So simply, it says that the separation of an asset from the threat. So later on, we'll discuss what are your assets, what is threat, what are examples of threats. Okay, so from the uh, from the concept of security here, according to the open source security testing methodology manual. So by separation or by separating your asset, let's say for example, your asset is yourself. Uh, the asset are your gadgets. The assets are your cash in the bank. And separating it from the threat or avoiding a possible interaction, there is a possibility that there is a total 100% security. Okay? So, by doing so, uh, your asset is secured. Okay? So, uh, we call or they call security the separation of an asset and a threat. Okay? So, understanding the concept of security, it also requires further knowing the definition of other related concepts such as asset, risk, threat, and vulnerability. So, in order for you to understand more about the concept of security, we need to also know the definition of assets, risk, threats, threat, or vulnerability. So, based from the picture that I have provided, asset is anything tangible or intangible that is capable of being controlled to produce value. So if it has positive economic value and if its value can be converted into cash, then it is an asset. So example here are the tangible assets like your washing machine, your cash, your coins, your property, your animals, your uh, trees, for example, your cars, your uh, cash in the bank. So those are examples of asset. Your another intangible assets example are your asset, your talent in singing that is considered as an asset. That when you sing, uh, in exchange of the service of singing, you will be paid. So if that asset is converted or if it has a positive economic value and can be converted into cash, then it is called an asset. Okay? Like for example, also patent from different brands. That is also an asset. By doing so on the patent, they would be able to produce product that in exchange of cash or an economic value. So that is an asset. So asset, again, if it is or if it has a positive economic value and if its value can be converted into cash, then it is called asset. Okay? Next, concept is about risk. So, unsa man pud ko what is risk? Risk is the uncertainty of financial loss, the probability that a loss has occurred or will occur, the variations between actual and expected results, or the possible occurrence of an undesirable event and the result is loss or a decrease in value. So, what are risk? So, if you have heard news before, like for example, someone invested in a uh cryptocurrency uh, stock, for example. And there is an uncertainty of financial loss. Like for example, uh, expected results. Like for example, the war in Ukraine and Russia. So it affected the stock market. Like right. So uh, investing in that cryptocurrency stock market, for example, there is already a risk because you don't know if there will be returns of the money you have invested. Okay, so that is risk and uncertainty of a possible financial loss, or there is a probability that a loss has occurred or will occur. You know that when investing into fraud companies with promise of high returns by investing that, and you know that either your money will be lost or there will be no uh return after. So by investing that, you know that there is a risk. Okay, so or the possible occurrence of an undesirable event, like my example, uh you have invested in cryptocurrency, and just like that, the war in Ukraine and Russia broke out. So that affected also the stock market. So that is an example of an undesirable event. So that is considered as risk. Because risk, the end result is loss or either a decrease in value. Another is threat. So what is threat? That is anything that could adversely affect your asset. It can be classified into a natural hazards, accidents, or intentional acts, for example, that would affect your asset. Like, for example, your establishment was erected in a riverbank area of along Pasig River, for example, and a possible threat that involves national natural hazards rather, uh like for example, if there is strong rains, there is a possibility of flash floods, and the water arises above the level intended, for example, and it will cause flash floods. Okay, so uh because your asset is your establishment, or your company is erected near that uh uh area, so there is already a threat that would affect your asset. What are those possible threats? It's either your goods will be damaged, will be wet from the water, therefore it cannot be sold. So that is considered as threat. Threat from natural hazards. Like what are other forms of natural hazard? Flash floods, uh, storms, earthquake, and other forms of natural hazard. We also have accidents or intentional acts. Intentional acts like what we call as inside job by employees. So that is a threat. Lastly, it is a vulnerability. Vulnerability means weakness, a flaw, or virtually anything that may conceivably be exploited by a threat. Examples are holes in a fence, an out-of-date key system, or the introduction of a computer virus. So vulnerability means the weakness or the flaw, or that is easily be exploited by a threat. Okay, so for example, uh, your establishment is again erected in a crime prone areas where snatching, hold up, and other crimes are rampant. And yet you know that your establishment could be vulnerable of that is exploited by a threat itself is your establishment is present in the uh in the in the in the crime prone area, and the vulnerability of ransacking your establishment, or the possibility that there is uh, hold up or whatsoever, or uh, theft or robbery in your area, because you do not apply an out of date key system, or you don't have any alarm systems, you don't have uh, any private security guards. So that becomes vulnerable, that comes from the threat. So that is vulnerability. So by investing on security guards, on alarm system, on CCTV cameras, your establishment would lessen the vulnerability of possible robbery in your area, right? So those are the related concepts when we talk about security. We have asset, risk, threat, and vulnerability. Okay, so let us now categorize the three major uh, categories of security. So these are the three categories of security. Namely, we have physical security, personal security, and document and information security. So later on, as we go along with our discussion, maybe next week we would be able to uh, discuss individually this physical security, personal security, document, and lastly, the document and information security. But let us run through with this today. So, physical security pertains to all physical barriers employed or installed to secure your assets. So, physical security, those physical barriers, for example, your gate, your uh, your key system, your alarm system, your CCTV cameras, those are examples, or your lighting system, those are barriers that is employed to secure your asset. Say, for example, in a school, uh, that school is your asset, right? So, by securing your asset, you hire security guards. You have uh, CCTV cameras. You have alarm system. You have the proper flow of uh, pedestrian or traffic. Okay, so that is uh, physical security. By using physical barriers that is employed to secure your asset. Another is personal security. This refers to the procedure followed, inquiries conducted, and criteria applied to determine the work suitability of a particular applicant or the retention of a particular employee. So, uh, personal security pertains to the people or to the individual we are hiring into our company, into our facility, into our organization. We make sure that the personnel we are hiring is can be trusted, honest, and loyal to your company, because there are instances that uh, there are common today are your corporate crimes, or what we call as inside job crimes, wherein most involved are those working in your company. So to prevent that, you need to uh, apply personal security. And how would you do that? By uh, interviewing the possible employee, by having him investigated or her investigated, or by doing so, getting clearances from NBI or police clearance that will make sure that you are hiring uh, uh, an employee who can be trusted, honest, and loyal to your facility, company, or your organization. So that is how, or that is personnel security. So personal from the word person, personal that involves uh, persons. Lastly is the document and information security. So this refers to policies, regulations, doctrines, and practices enforced to safeguard the contents and integrity of any classified information or document from compromise or loss. So there is also an important or a necessary, or it is necessary to protect documents and other information, because if that information or documents will be disclosed, would endanger your company, would endanger the person, or would endanger the the whole nation. For example, especially today that we are common with cyber crimes, wherein cyber attacking, cyber hacking is uh, common. So by doing, or how will you protect your information? That is by putting security codes, passwords, security locks, or information should be encrypted so that not everyone can access uh, the codes or information. So by doing that, document and information security is already applied. So those are the three categories or three major categories of security. We have physical, personal, and document and information security. So in apart from knowing the three categories of security, we also have to include the different types of security that is also uh, managed, applied, or enforced by the state, by our private partnerships, for example. So, first is political security. So, what is political security? This is another category that relate to social relationships involving governments or entities that hold authority or power. So this involves now on the uh, relationships that involves our state, our government, and the person who holds authority or power against us or against the community, right? So we have also, or political security also categorizes into three. First is public security. This refers to the way governments are ensuring the protection of its citizens, organizations, and institutions against threats to their well-being, as well as maintaining the general security and peace in public places. So who are they going to protect under public security? So we, the people. So what these are examples of protecting the general security and public uh, peace and order in public places. So how will they employ that? That is by deploying law enforcement personnel. That is already uh, public security, right? Next, we have national security. It is the requirement to maintain the survival of a state through the use of economic power, diplomacy, and political power. So, the requirement to maintain the survival of a state through the use of economic power, diplomacy, and political power. Like, for example, especially now that insurgency, terrorism is common in our country, or that is, or our country is facing today. So, in order for us to be safe, so there should be an employment of national security that would deter, that would prevent the attacks of insurgency. Okay, so that is national security. Lastly, we have international security. This consists of the measures taken by nations and international organizations to ensure mutual survival and safety. Like for example, uh, what we call as the World Bank or the IMF fund, the monetary fund that is given by those developing countries as an aid to continue their uh, economic stability. So by having that partnership with international organizations would ensure that we are uh, uh, we survive and we feel safe. Another example, especially today that we are transnational crime are also rampant, common, or that is, or all, maybe all countries are affected with transnational crime. So transnational crime does not only involve one country, but it involves one, two or more countries. So by having that uh, measures from international organizations from other countries uh, that perpetrate, apprehend, or prosecute these crimes, so you would be able to uh, be secured. So that is how international security plays an important role. So those are the three different categories of political security. That is also important, necessary for the state to run, to maintain peace and order in our community, and especially uh, economically, or there is an economic stability that would provide jobs, that would yes, provide jobs to everyone. That is political security. So another uh, type of security is on the private sphere, or on private security areas. So private security areas also categorizes some security uh, measures applied in private agencies. So uh, we have six categories of private security. So first is industrial security. This involves the safeguarding of personnel, processes, properties, and operations. Example, in a uh, factory, the person who are working in the factory, their processes, the properties, and operation should be secured or should be protected. So that is industrial security. The patent that they are following, that patent should be secured, right? So that is industrial security, mostly pertains to the operations of industrial plants and business enterprises. Next is on bank and armor security. So different private agencies also employs different types of security measures. So industrial security is different, or measures involving industrial security is different from the measures involving protecting the banks or armor armor vehicles, for example. So bank and armor security involves the protection resulting from the application of various measures which safeguards cash and assets in storage, in transit, or during transactions, especially uh, armor vehicles when they are in transit, to prevent possible highway robbery while they are in transit. So there should be a security measure employed. One is their armor vehicles is tinted, or bullets cannot pass through the armor vehicle, and there are many uh, security guards uh, together with the person while in transit together with the money. So again, private agencies employ different types of security measures in their establishment. Next is hotel security. This also involves the measures of protection of your guests, personal properties, and functions in hotels, restaurants, bars, and clubs. We have VIP security, involves the protection of processes, formula, patents, and industrial and manufacturing activities from espionage, infiltration. Uh, we have, the VIP security involves the protection of top-ranking officials of the government, visiting persons of illustrious standing, and foreign dignitaries. So there is a technical error wherein the definition of the VIP security pertains to operational security. So I'm sorry for that. So VIP security from the word VIP, very important person. So if there are foreign dignitaries, ambassadors, consuls that would arrive in our country, there is a special protection measures, special security measures employed to protect these important persons. Okay, so that is VIP security. Next is on uh so yes, this the definition on VIP security pertains to operational security. So operational security involves the protection of processes, formula, patents, and industrial and manufacturing activities from espionage, infiltration, loss, compromise, or infringement. When we say operational security, example are your patents, are your formula that would if that would be disclosed, or that or other companies will be able to have that, so they would be able to copy your product. Diba? So that is operational security, making sure that your processes, your formula, your patents, and other activities are protected from espionage, infiltration, loss, compromise, or infringement. So another is uh, communication security, involves the safeguard resulting the application of different measures which prevent or delay the enemy or unauthorized person from gaining information through communication, including transmission and cryptographic, especially now that phishing, uh, or what we call as spear phishing or phishing or attacks through our uh, mobile phones or through our emails are common. So by doing that, the responsibility of all telecommunications company is to secure the information stored in our uh, communication services, for example. So to prevent any attacks from that. So there is also a different type of security measures involving communication security. So lastly is on mall or commercial security. So it is the degree of protection against danger, loss, and crime inside malls. So malls also has different types of uh, type or different measures of security being implemented. So as a form of protection, it refers to systems, structures, and processes that provide of improved mall security as a condition. So uh, if you have been to big malls, so they have different types of security measures applied in their establishment or in their malls. So those are the types of or the categories of security. We have the three major categories. We have the uh, political security, and lastly, it's on the private sphere or on the private side that also employs different types of security measures. So lastly is on security management in organization. So security management has become an essential feature of corporate activity. So there is almost no organization without a team dedicated to managing issues of security. As what I have said, security does not only pertains to the physical establishment, but also on the personnel, on their uh, natural disasters. So there is almost no organization, maybe a private or public or a private or a government entity that do not employ uh, or that is not dedicated to manage the issues of security. Okay, so we usually see shopping malls, entertainment venues, and banks policed by private armies, which we call as our security guards. So the presence of this uniformed staff represents the company's ability to respond or deter threats. So by having a security guard that would uh, help deter threats or respond to threats. So other security measures may include the installation of CCTVs, sophisticated alarm systems, policies against workplace bullying and harassment, employee screening, emergency planning, and other measures that enable individuals and organizations to carry on with their business free from danger. So, who would not want an establishment organization that is free from danger, right? So, there is always security management in your uh, facility. So, with corporate crime becoming a growing area of concern, the increasing role of private security in crime prevention is becoming more evident. So, this further highlights the need for increased competence and professionalism among security personnel so that they can effectively play their important role of risk prevention and management in the organization. So, especially today, that corporate activity again is uh, a common crime in with regards to an establishment. So as future criminologist, so future criminologist does not only limits your job as a law enforcement officer. You can also venture on security management. You would become a security consultant. You would become a security manager, a security officer. You would be able to uh, manage the security issues or activity in your organization because of course before you would become a security manager consultant or whatsoever, so you also need to have related trainings in the field and etc. Okay, so that is security management in organizations. Again, there is almost no organization without a team dedicated to manage issues of security. So security should be managed effectively for us to be free from danger and harm. Okay, so that ends our discussion on the concept of security.